Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my last Rise of Kyoshi chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 32, which is called Hauntings. This is the last chapter of the book. Like I said before, it's more of an epilogue type chapter, but it is still very good because we get sort of like where we sort of stand after all this stuff that's just happened. Where is Kyoshi as we end this book and go into the next book? And then what are the kind of key setup moments going into it? Because we do get a cliffhanger ending. It's not one of those ones that like, oh, this book isn't as good because they teased that, but it is more of like, that is a good setup for the second book. That means we at least have something on our mind going into the second part. So, we actually cut some time has passed. Kyoshi is now in the Southern Air Temple. None of the group is with her, as is explained. Her friends had gone their separate ways. Kirima and Wong wanted to take a break from smuggling and lie low for a while, living off the injection of loot they'd pilfered from Jianzhu's mansion. They promised to keep in touch and show their faces once Kyoshi had established herself. They were the Avatar's companions after all. No doubt she could pardon them for whatever troubles they got up to. Lao Ji declined to go with them, claiming he needed to rest his weary bones. In private he told Kyoshi that as the Avatar and an important world leader, she was now on his watch list. He was only half joking, but she didn't mind. She was pretty sure she could take the old man in a fight to the death now. Heiran had woken up. Rangi, fighting for each word, told Kyoshi that she needed to take her mother to the North Pole, where the best healers in the world lived. If there was any chance of her to recover fully, it would be found among the experts of the Water Tribe. That meant saying goodbye for who knew how long. They could and would find each other again in the future, but as Lao Ji had forebode, they wouldn't be the same people when it happened. So, as much as Kyoshi wanted to stay with her, in a single frozen pool of moments, the current carrying them forward was too strong. That is an interesting approach of just that relationship. They came together, it was really well done. But the book is already kind of almost suggesting that, you know, this may not be the sort of end game relationship for Kyoshi. Like when they meet up again, their relationship, it might not really necessarily be a thing. It was always going to be a weird one because we always knew about the whole idea of Coco, Kyoshi's daughter, and at some point that has to happen. So there has to be another love interest for Kyoshi somewhere along the way, unless they're going to say that Coco isn't really canon anymore and that was just a thing that like Avatar extras had made up. They could take either way with it. They don't have to go either way or the other, but you know, I think for the most part, most people do treat the whole Coco thing as being an established piece of the lore. It would make sense, you know, why wouldn't there be some, you know, Kyoshi descendant somewhere along the line? But anyway, still interesting that Lao Ji is sort of, you know, foretelling the future that, you know, when you meet again, like it might not be the way you expect it to be. But anyway, so she goes to the Air Temple, and it's an interesting one. During the orientation for her fellow lay people, she'd introduced herself by asking everyone to stand back. In front of the monks, she'd summoned a tornado of fire and air. So she just goes up in a group that's, you know, having a pilgrimage to the Southern Air Temple and shows off multiple elements. And what's interesting, what they describe here is basically that the reason she went to the Air Nomads is because she knew they would be the ones to accept this reveal the easiest. They wouldn't try to politic things and try to take over the power, the privilege of, you know, training the Avatar. They would do everything to, you know, keep Kyoshi safe and make it as easy as possible for her. So they accept her story, completely 100% true, and the Air Nomads are the ones who have to deal with the Earth Sages coming in and trying to be like, that's our Avatar, it's the Earth Avatar, we have to do that. You know, the whole, oh no wait, Yoon is the Avatar, but they don't know what happened with Yoon and all that sort of stuff. So they're the ones to deal with all the chaos, and they just kind of keep Kyoshi out of it for the most time, so she's able to be as calm as possible. And it's revealed here that she has a monk Jinpa, who's the sort of chamberlain looking after kind of her, as well as being the temple's administrative group, the leader of the temple's administrative group, handling logistics and finance where the Air Nomads were forced to deal with the material world. Even monks needed someone to look after what little money ended up in their possession. So, Jinpa is the one to tell Kyoshi about basically, okay, since all these incidents have happened, here is what basically the public perception is like. So, yeah, tragedy at Yokoya is worse than feared. 2 score of the Earth Kingdom's elite murdered by poison, and some of the household as well. They think it's an act of revenge by a Dao Fei group, but ultimately it's not very clear. This is where obviously they figure out like Rangi's mother may have fallen by the same means and so on. She didn't know if Auntie Mui was alive. She had to go back to Yokoya as soon as possible. So that's part of Kyoshi's plan. Then Kyoshi asks, "What about Chinchou village?" The officers found Master Jianzhu's body. A couple of witnesses have corroborated your story that a young man killed him in cold blood, but many of the townsfolk aren't convinced of your innocence. Nearly all of them maintain that you destroyed the tea house. So that's all right. I doubt I'll be bothering the Chins again anytime soon. So that's an interesting one in that it is now going to go down as a piece of history that the people of Qin, the tribe of Qin, consider it a fact that Kyoshi destroyed the centerpiece of their town, that being their great 3-story stone tea shop. So that is a thing that they are blaming Kyoshi 100% for, even though she saved everyone. So that's going to be an interesting one in terms of, I suppose, potentially how they maybe set up actual Qin the Conqueror and why he maybe saves Kyoshi until last. But we'll have to wait and see what, I suppose, Book 2 maybe does about that, to see if we meet a slightly younger Qin at some point. Master Jianzhu's death came with a complication. It seems that several close associates, including the Earth King and the King of Amashu, held copies of his sealed last will and testament to be opened on the event of his death. It named the Avatar as the inheritor of his entire estate. So Kyoshi's like, oh, who cares? He was training Yun to be his successor in protecting the Earth Kingdom. It makes sense. The monk shook his head. The will refers to you by name, Avatar Kyoshi. Master Jianzhu sent copies by messenger hawks only a few weeks ago. In the documents, he confesses to his great mistake in wrongly identifying the Avatar and beseeches his colleagues to give you their full support, as he posthumously does. His lands, his riches, his house, they're yours now. So that is a very interesting one, and that makes you all think again about what was Jianzhu's perspective going into that last fight, that he always set it up that even if he had died there, even if Kyoshi took revenge against him, he was still going to make it so that the Avatar had as much support as possible. If Kyoshi was not going to let him be the one to guide her, he would leave behind his success basically to her so that she would have sort of a structure to be a successful Avatar. It shows that, like, ultimately deep down, despite everything that he did, he still always had the world needs its Avatar, and the Avatar needs to play a role in the world, and it needs to be supported in a good way as being his prime ideal ultimately. He just went too far to maintain himself in that position. So it's so interesting just that this continues. Even beyond the grave, there's this final little thing with Jianzhu. So anyway, it still settles the idea of like everyone thinks that I murdered him to inherit his wealth, and it's like, oh well, yeah, it's kind of hard to get away from that, but it's ultimately accepted that like Kyoshi's just, because of what happened in this story, Kyoshi is always going to have this sort of like early legacy of like all of these rumors swirling around about her, about what happened with Zhu Ping'an, what happened with Jianzhu, what happened in Qinshao, what happened with the Dao Fei and stuff like that. Her publicly coming out as the Avatar is always going to have all this lingering stuff about what is the truth about it, and it's going to be interesting about how much she is open about and how much she sort of kind of keeps hidden, but we'll see what exactly happens here. Anyway, so this is where we get to the kind of last scene of the book, pretty much. He goes to leave and basically asks her, is there anything else you need right now, Master Avatar Kyoshi? And he says, I noticed Master Kelsang's name in various registers around the temple, but in a lower place of honor than his experience would suggest. Apologies, Avatar, but that's an issue of air nomad practices, you see. It's customary to maintain a level of separation between those who've taken a life, directly or indirectly, and those who've remained spiritually pure. It applies to names and records as well. So, she says, I'd like Master Kelsang's name to be restored to his regular esteemed status. The Council of Elders won't be pleased, but I would be, Kyoshi replied. In fact, a statue would be nice. As you wish, Avatar Kyoshi. And if you have any further requests, let me know. It's the least my compatriots and I can do after failing to come to your assistance for so long. We were unfortunately in the dark along with the rest of the world. Kyoshi tilted her head. The air nomads weren't to blame for my troubles. I, referring to a different we, Jimpa scratched the back of his neck. Do you play Paisho by any chance? Kyoshi frowned at this cryptic statement and sudden tangent. I do not. I have no taste for the game. And this is where Jimpa leaves. This is kind of one of the weirdest parts of the book in a way, in that like you can easily go past that and be like, that was a kind of awkward exchange. But then you realize like there's something to that. Why did he say we and then say, I'm not referring to the air nomads by we? The only thing I can think of here is that because he directly then says, like awkwardly transitioning into do you play Paisho, is this is meant to be our first hint of the Order of the White Lotus in this book. We've had no real hint or anything like that up to now, beyond like, okay, Kuruk plays Paisho, Yun plays Paisho, that sort of thing. But this is the first time it really feels like, oh, like a wee different than the air nomads, with the guy who's like the air nomad who more deals with the other nations and this sort of stuff. That would make sense that like he's sort of in that sort of position. But anyway, I'm not really sure what to make of that. It's just a quick tease. I think that's what it's going for anyway. Yeah, she goes down, begins to meditate. She sat down in the pose Lao Ji had taught her and closed her eyes halfway. She spent much of her time at the air temple meditating in this spot. So, then last page, Kyoshi, she heard a man say. Her eyes flew open where she could have seen her reflection in the water. She saw a changing outline, still of a person, but rippling between dozens of shapes, as if she dashed the surface of the pool. Kyoshi, she heard the voice say again. A gust of wind sent her hair flying. A shroud of mist rose from the pool. She blinked, and there was a man sitting on top of the water, facing her, mirroring her pose. He was in his 30s and ruggedly handsome. He wore the regalia of a great water tribe chieftain, his dark blue furs offsetting the paleness of his eyes. His body was adorned with the trophies of a mighty hunter, the sharp teeth of beasts laced around his neck and wrist. Kyoshi, I need your help, he pleaded. She stared at the spirit of the man whom she knew was dead, the man who'd been Jianzhu and Heiran and Kelsang's friend, the man who'd been her predecessor in the Avatar cycle. Kuruk, to be continued. So, very cool ending of the book there, right at the end, with finally getting to communicate with one of the previous avatars, properly talking to them. And it's Kuruk, of course, and he's specifically asking for her help with something. And this is obviously meant to be some sort of a setup towards, I think, learning more about what exactly happened in the final years of Kuruk's life. Like, we've always associated it as being like, oh, the whole thing with Ko taking Umi's face, and then he basically just devoted every aspect of himself to trying to get Umi back, and that's what led him into the early grave. I think this seems to be suggesting that there's more of a story to that, and that's kind of why the likes of Heiran, Jianzhu, Kelsang didn't really talk a lot about the sort of very last few years of Kuruk's life, and aren't... The Umi incident was only really mentioned once offhandedly, and that it's not really talked about. So there's something maybe a little bit secret going on around that, and I think that's what it would have to be. Because otherwise, like, I doubt Kuruk is going to be the one to mention to Kyoshi, oh, there's this thing going to happen, or this obvious thing you have to resolve now. I think it would be that you have to try and help resolve this issue that I was dealing with before I died. That's very, very important. But, still, it's a great little setup of, like, I assume maybe immediately going into the second book that might be addressed very early on, or they'll wait a little bit and then reveal what exactly Kuruk was talking about. Because, again, Kyoshi hasn't had the best opinion of Kuruk. The few times she mentioned him, more in the early chapters of the book before she found out she was the Avatar, she was very dismissive of him. She was blaming him a lot for. He should have been the one to have had to deal with this. And it's true, but this might be the book to help kind of redeem Kuruk in a way, and not just have him be the Avatar who didn't do his job and stuff like that. I hope this is potentially explaining the Ko story in full, because the entire thing with that is that, ultimately, for me, why does Ko go after Umi? Why does Ko decide that he needs to punish Kuruk? Did Kuruk do something to him, or what? Why is Ko in that position? Because, like, we know Ko is not really the punisher of the Avatar or anything like that. Especially, like, the search and the introduction of the Mother of Faces as being Ko's mother definitely helped to more associate Ko as being almost like a younger style spirit of like, he's not as ancient as a lot of the other spirits, and he's more meddlesome, and that he's interacting with humans to cause a bit of chaos. So why was he messing around with the avatars, I suppose, is the real question. And that it doesn't seem like there's any real spiritual aspect to like the spirits are allowed to punish the avatar for not doing anything. Especially if what was happening was just like Dao Fei type stuff. But this is where we're going to have to wait and see. I hope it is more of a detailed reveal about the whole Ko situation, the Umi situation, and so on, and maybe explain that in the last few years of Kuruk's life, maybe he was really honestly doing something as the Avatar, but something happened. This could be really, really good, depending on what way they go about it. Because we know, like, it might actually link into the Yoon plot in a way with Father Glowworm, who was said to have had a previous issue with one of the Avatars. That's why he's able to know which Avatar is which, because he's interacted with so many of them. But the fact that like he knows the Avatar's blood may suggest that he fought an Avatar before and got some of the blood. That's how he's able to confirm which is an Avatar or not. But how does like Jianzhu know about Glowworm? Did Glowworm do something to Yoon? Does that relate to maybe Yusuf with Ko? There's a way for it all to kind of flow together if you really want to think about it that way. But it is a nice reveal right at the end. And then, yeah, like that Kyoshi's already developed a little bit of a reputation for herself. These little rumors are kind of building up, and there's these things. But I think in all of this, what you get here is that, okay, here is in a way why Kyoshi goes on, why the place goes on to become Kyoshi Island. Because Jianzhu made the place better than it was before by creating that mansion. Now Kyoshi owns that. She owns that new sort of structure that is there in Yokoya. And when she goes back and potentially makes it her home, it's going to be interesting to see if it immediately becomes like Kyoshi Village or whatever, and then when she separates it into an island, it's Kyoshi Island, or what? Does it remain known as Yokoya for long, or what? But I like the setup for that of like, now we have why Kyoshi is actually considered to be an important person in Yokoya, because she now owns this sort of mansion there. So that is an interesting one as well. And then, yeah, the subtle setup with the whole Chin Village thing. She destroyed their tea shop. It's a little bit of a minor thing in the grand scheme of things, but she does have a bit of history there, at least now. And it gives maybe a reason for Chin Village to not like her anymore. And again, because they're like either side of the peninsula, they're neighbors basically as well. And yeah, we now have Kyoshi with the airbender, so she can get her airbending training, the one element she had no official training in. And yeah, then Kirima can come back, get some waterbending training done. Again, depending on how exactly they do the flow of the next part of the story, she could get training from Kirima, but she could also get training from other waterbenders and so on. She probably still needs some firebending training, but will it be someone else, or will Rangi come back into things? And I like that sort of setup, that like you don't know for sure that the next book will just be the reformation of this team again, and it'll be, you know, Laoji, Wong, Kirima, Rangi all coming back together. Like there is a chance that she may almost not see some of them like almost ever again, or if she does, it may not be the same way as it was before. So that's going to be super, super interesting. But yeah, I'll save a lot of like speculation for like a future video, doing full-on speculation going into the next book. But you know, this as the ending chapter, I do really like. It means that this first book, The Rise of Kyoshi, has an end. We have seen the rise of Kyoshi, and the book feels complete as of this chapter. It doesn't feel like we've only got part one of a story. There's of course more to come with Kyoshi, but we've been told the full story of Kyoshi going from being not knowing she's the Avatar, discovering she's the Avatar, to being open as the Avatar. This is the first section of that story, and it dealt with her rivalry with Jianzhu, killing her first person, all that sort of stuff. And it feels very, very complete. That's what I'll say about this book by the end. You have little bits and pieces you still want to know about, but that is just the sign of a good part one, that it leaves stuff set up, but there's still a lot of depth covered, that it gave you answers to a lot of things, but there's still a few things left open. Mainly the whole Kuruk thing right at the end, but also the continued mystery with Yoon that, of course, Kyoshi's going to have to investigate. And I assume that investigation is going to start with her going to Glowworm, and it may link into whatever Kuruk tells her. But yeah, that is my thoughts on this chapter, the last chapter of the book Hauntings. That has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.